We're back with Track Talk, this time commenting on a game of 18 Chesapeake. 18 Chesapeake is a game that, like most games that are suggested as a beginner-friendly game, is a little bit controversial. I've played this game, probably 50 plus times, mostly when it first came out, or first was sold by All Aboard Games. And I agree with many of the complaints that have arisen in the community since its release, but I do think it serves a purpose in terms of introducing players to the genre, and plus we just want to get some new games into the rotation here on Track Talk. So we will go through this game. I don't know these players. Typically 18 Chesapeake is played by people that are a little bit newer to 18xx, so we may see some newer players in this game, but we will just try and enjoy it and see what they get up to. So RMROC, I'll probably just call him RM, is leading us off in the auction, and he would bid on the Cornelius Vanderbilt. In this game, it is coming with a share of the B&O, which is kind of interesting because the B&O also has a share available on the B&O private. So there will be 30% of this company in player hands at the end of the auction, making it basically guaranteed to float. And it also, I guess in some sense, reduces the interest on the B&O private, since usually that share is the only way to par that pretty good company early in the stock round, but now there is a potential to lose the presidency to the player with the Cornelius Vanderbilt. Turtlehead will be going second, and he actually just pulls and will buy the cheap private for 20 bucks. Hawk is happy to bid on the Cornelius Vanderbilt. So again, the B&O is usually a pretty good railroad in this game, and you will be the president by winning this auction, or winning that private. Fast Attack, happy to take a cheap Columbia and Philadelphia for 40. This is a private that allows you to lay 2 tracks on the map when you buy it in, and it is these 2 tracks here. So it is important for the Lehigh Valley Company to, potentially get that private and start working towards the west. This is opening up some pretty high value buy-ins for other players by buying these cheap privates right off the bat. So far, no contested privates have gone up for auction. RMOC, he will be starting us off in the second round, and he's happy to take a private for face. I imagine that we will just see the rest of these privates go for face too. Someone might want to try and bid up the Baltimore and Ohio, but they may not get the opportunity. Chesapeake and Ohio is going for face, and so all the privates basically go for face. I think that there is value in, contesting privates and forcing players to pay out on privates. So it's unusual to see privates just go for face like this. Now, the Cornelius Vanderbilt will be the only private to have an auction, and it is between RM and Hawk. RM has paid a little bit less than Hawk, so maybe willing to pay a little bit more for the Cornelius Vanderbilt than Hawk is. But Hawk is pretty motivated to get this private because he already has a share in the B&O, so I assume he's trying to maintain that presidency. And they are bidding it up to 240, and Hawk does take it. So he will have the presidency of the Cornelius of the B&O, and has the option of parring for 95, as he will then be able to buy 2 more shares and float. So may see him do that. And he takes a little bit less extreme and takes a middling par at 80. The market in 18 Chesapeake is a kind of sliced and diced 1830 market, in the sense that it has only 3 par prices. It has a very shallow yellow region, making it hard to, take advantage of that and run a yellow company. And it also has slightly different par values that are not arranged vertically from one another, but are kind of staggered. Fast Attack has priority and has his choice of companies with a 60% float and a $95 maximum par value. You are not able to par a company with $560, so he will have to pick a lower par. Popular companies in this game include the Lehigh Valley, the CNA, the B&O, of course, and in some cases the PLE or the CNO. N&W, SRR are typically reserved for later starts, and the PRR sometimes gets some play as a result of its proximity to these privates with the track, so it can get a little bit of a head start on the track laying. But I would say that the New York adjacent companies, CNA, LV, and Baltimore and Ohio, are three of the more common starting companies. Fast Attack takes a share in the PRR, so not a bad company at all. Just if he doesn't have control of these privates, may be a little bit hard to get a quick start, but he does have the Columbia in Philadelphia, so we'll be heading towards New York using that private. RM now has another track laying private, and we'll see which company he wants to start, the CNO. So no real synergy there. May just throw away those track lays. CNO is a good company, starts in the southeast, and is usually able to get into Washington, D.C. without too much trouble. Sometimes some tension with the B&O player in terms of how this tile is laid, but in green he should be able to get in there. Turtlehead now is just buying the B&O, so helping Hawk float. And Hawk is happy to take the help and will buy his own share. Fast Attack will continue to float, and it looks like Turtlehead is now going to be sitting on the presidency of the PLE. He does have 280, so he will be able to float that on himself by himself. The PLE starts far in the west and does have some interesting track options in the early game where it can run pretty hot by laying the double dit here and then tokening here and potentially heading to Ohio to run 3 trains. We'll need to be in green for that to happen, but that is a viable start. Oftentimes the PLE hopes to get a token down into Washington, D.C. as well. Fast Attack will continue to float, and I think that we will just see everybody floating their own companies now. So we will have the B&O leading us off in the operating order, and then the PLE will be the last to float. So we should be seeing Hawk leading in operating order and also having priority. Hawk will almost certainly be heading straight to DC here. DC is a major revenue center in the game, so he will hope to lay a token there quickly and control that for the rest of the game. And he actually does not buy a train, which I think is a mistake. There's an export in this game, so the 2 trains are a little bit less valuable than they are in 1830, although the 2 trains are controversially valuable, I guess, in 1830. In high-level play, you'll often see players trying to avoid them. But I think that having a 2 train and running into DC is almost certainly in this player's best interest. PRR will be laying towards Hagerstown. The CP track here is going to be blocked off until he's able to buy his private in, so not going to be able to head east until that happens, but is free to start heading west. May see him try and lay one of these mountain tiles and get into Ohio for the end game, but probably doesn't want to be too friendly to the PLE unless he's thinking that he may eventually be running that company or a major investor in it. He does buy a 2 train. CNO now will probably be heading, in the general direction of Washington, D.C., and also probably will just buy 1 train. PLE's first operation lays a double dit tile. It's important for this tile to be cognizant of how he is affecting the abilities of the LV and the CNA to network around New York. So if he is hoping to run the LV or the CNA in the future, he may have taken that into consideration when he's picking his tile here. He buys 2 true trains and will be probably dropping a token on Greenspring in the next operating round. Hawk did not buy any trains for his company and will be falling back as a result. He doesn't have any cash for shares. The only player that does is RM, so he will be passing. RM, does he buy a share here? Will buy B&O, which is interesting because that's the one company that we know will not be operating. So I would not have chosen that company for my investment. And Turtlehead and the rest of the players will be passing. B&O actually neglects to lay track, and kind of inexplicable to me why that would be the case. I guess he would just like to sit on his private revenue. Um, Figures that $30 is going to get him more than the revenue from running Washington, D.C. He has 6 shares. Washington, D.C., does it start at 40 in yellow? Let me see. It starts at 30. So he would be making $30 into his company by running that run. So equal to his private revenue. I guess he figures that since other players are invested in his company, why make 30 and give them 5 when you can make 30 without any money at all, or without giving them anything at all. I will say that this really stalls his track development. So it's not just about your net worth, it's also about developing your runs and getting track down to assist your second company in the future. So I think that this is not a great play. But I understand now his logic behind doing it. PRR does lay Hagerstown, gets his 2-train run, and it looks like he will pay that out. CNO still without 2 runs will be laying up to DC and running his train. PLE will be probably tokening in Greenspring, and as a result will be running better than the other companies. Each of the operating rounds, there is an export of a non-permanent train. So despite players not buying trains, we are advancing through the train roster. This is kind of a unique factor for 18Chesapeake, and is one of the reasons why it's considered a game for beginners or a learning game. But it will have an impact here in that we will be breaking into the threes in the next operating round, even if no players buy a 2-train. Turtlehead buys another B&O. So again, it's a company that doesn't seem interested in paying out. I don't know why he's investing in that company, but we will see. Hawk will be buying the PLE. It is running for the most, and the rest of the players are just passing. That gives Fast Attack, the PRR player, priority into the next stock round. PRR does look like it's interested in laying some track, is not cooperating exactly with PLE, but this does give PLE a run once we break into the green phase, and the PLE will be able to avoid paying the mountains. PRR is going to, looks like, pay out. Will he buy a second 2-train? It would only get him a run into a DIT, so I assume you would not buy a 2-train for that. How is he able to buy a 3-train with a 2-train in the bank? That seems odd. Is there a glitch there? Because he did buy the 2-train, but he was somehow able to buy the 3-train first. Not sure what happened there. I don't think that should have been allowed. That may have been just a little glitch. CNO laying train to get into Washington, D.C., and will be running his single train. May buy a 3-train here in order to have 2 runs. Also, just want to point out that the PRR player bought into the 3s, but left his private unbought, so will not get that influx of cash. And we'll see, so he does buy a 3-train, and will he buy in his privates? Looks like he's happy to sit on them as well. Now, the B&O player may have a little bit more of an incentive to lay DC now, as he will have a better run once the 3 trains are now available and he can run through DC. Instead, just deciding to sit on his track lay and buys in his private. So is he looking to dump on Turtlehead? I don't think that's a devastating, event if it does occur. Turtlehead will probably be happy to buy up those cheap B&O shares. Still has $600 and all the track potential in the world. Turtlehead upgrading and looking to probably run 3 trains in the next OR. He actually passes, so will not be able to take advantage of that strategy. The 2 trains that he has will be running okay, though. Can get the offboard here into the DIT and then Greenspring into the Ohio offboard. Fast Attack leads us off and buys a PLE. Another PLE comes off the IPO, and a PRR. Hawk has a bunch of cash as he's the only player that bought in a private, and will basically be buying a PLE as well. The other players are passing. Hawk continues to buy paying shares, will be going last again in the next stock round, and has now invested in basically all the companies. Looks like he is being master moded, so hopefully that's just a temporary thing. I hate when we stumble into these games where a player is being master moded. Looks like everybody's going to be passing here. PRR is going to lead us off, and we'll connect up with Pittsburgh, presumably. He does have 3 trains, so he can run into the offboard from Hagerstown, but he did not. Well, will he token it, I guess is the question. He does, so he can now run both of his trains. Will he buy in his private? Maybe wanting to wait into the second OR of this operating set, and looks like he's going to be doing at least that. CNO lays the Washington, D.C., probably will drop a token there in order to run 2 trains, and now is running much better than it was in the past. PLE probably laying towards Ohio and running his 2 trains, and he pays that out and will buy a 3. So now has 3 trains and can run all 3 of those. Will probably be running for the most in the next operating round as a result. B&O continues to fall back and does have a route now, so we'll be forced to buy a train. Actually upgrades Baltimore, so we'll be heading east. The Baltimore token, or the Baltimore track, is an important choke point in this game, along with Philadelphia. So the fact that Baltimore starts with a token there by default is a nice benefit for that company. He will be laying that token or that tile and giving the CNA an option of running west through Wilmington into this 00. He buys his first train of the game, and the second set is now upon us. The PRR does have the option of buying in his private and laying his track east now, maybe looking to start the LV once he lays friendly track. He will have priority moving into the next stock round. So that's a pretty nice synergy, the PRR and the LV. He upgrades Hagerstown and will be running his trains. He unfortunately is still sitting on his private. I'm not sure what the rationale is there. CNO upgrades DC. B&O is grateful for the help there and will be running his 2 trains and paying out. PLE, does he lay the mountain here to start heading towards DC? Looks like he is looking for a 3rd run into Ohio. Probably will not be running 3 trains for very long here. I expect these 2s to be rusting probably in the next operating round. He is happy to buy in his private, so we still have, I think, 2 players just sitting on their privates, and he will buy in his second private as well, so he will probably be floating the company here. B&O laying for the high value town down here, and will be running 3 stops. He does take the token in DC. There's no real competition for that right now, but it is a good token to have, so probably figured he'd want it eventually. Might as well lay it now while he's certain to have the cash. There are only 4 trains available, so these 2 trains almost certainly will not be running if these companies get sold down. The PLE is the only one that's vulnerable in terms of operating order, because these companies, even if they're sold down, will be operating before any newly floated companies. So they have successfully secured their runs. Fast Attack takes the N&W. That's an interesting choice. The N&W is a suitcase candidate, but starting it this early in the game pretty much means that it's going to be broken as a suitcase. So he may just be looking to build synergistic track between the PLE and the N&W and just run them as a duo. This has the downside that, yeah, they'll monopolize the west side of the map, But the track development here is a little bit limited in the sense that there's not too many revenue centers, and there's also terrain cost all over the place. So the long-term potential of this strategy is probably limited. He will eventually have to head east if he wants to have higher running routes. RMC is parring the SRR. This is probably the worst company in the game, so would not have been my first choice. He will also have to sell shares in order to par it this operating round, so may see him doing that. Turtlehead, he may be just looking to trash some stocks, take a quick 25 bucks, and then par a company. It looks like the Hawk player is kind of onto that strategy and is selling before Turtlehead is given the opportunity to manifest that full $25 benefit. Hawk is also selling out of the PRR, and he will be looking to float a company of his own most likely. He takes the CNA. CNA is a strong company, has great synergy with the B&O. If they can lock down the Baltimore tile, they will control that into, I believe, gray when it opens up. So it is only 2 holes up until gray. So he may be able to lay this token on Philadelphia and command all access through Baltimore as a result. Fast Attack is continuing to float the NW. The SRR is still floating. Turtlehead is still looking for free cash in the market and maybe floating his company last as a result. We see the CNA bought. I think that, well, it looks like Fast Attack is not going to actually float the NW, so just invest 30%. If you're trying to reserve the presidency, I don't know that I would invest more than 20%. You can buy a paying share instead. And RMC also will have to sell if he wants to continue to float the SRR. So it looks like they're both just going to sit on 30% of this presidency. That's definitely a mistake. Turtlehead has bought all the IPO shares now, may see him sell and continue to do this for the PRR, for instance, in order to get all the cash out of these companies that he can. Instead, he's just sitting on these shares. Maybe we'll do that in the next operation. We'll see. So he buys a PRR. He may just be looking to buy paying shares. This is opening him up to dumps from multiple companies since he's almost certainly going to be operating last if Hawk is allowed to just float the CNA by the other players. So the CNA is floated. Turtlehead is still taking actions, so will be second to last in priority unless he takes an action again. He is now happy to sell out and maybe looking to steal the NW. Looks like that's what we're seeing here. Fast Attack looks to defend. And Turtlehead is going to force the issue. So Fast Attack is going to have to sell again in order to maintain his presidency here. So the NW is floated. It is secure in its presidency. May see Turtlehead just sell out now and trash the value of this company. Looks like that's exactly what we see. Will he do the same maneuver for the SRR? Looks like he is motivated to do that, and Hawk is also joining him. RMOC is no fool. He saw what just happened and is looking to defend his company. Hawk also has 2 shares. So the problem with 2 people doing this is that one of you is going to eat the net worth cost when the other player sells down. You can't sell down at the same time, obviously. So Turtlehead may buy a 3rd share and then just sell out and hurt Hawk and RMOC. He looks to get a little greedy here and is actually going to buy a 4th share. I'm not sure why Hawk held these 2 shares. So both of those companies have been floated but also trashed into the yellow. Hawk kind of unnecessarily taking a net worth hit there, and Turtlehead as a result is leading in value. He has sacrificed the opportunity to float good companies, but for some reason the LV is still available, so that is a pretty good company that he will potentially be able to float here. And it looks like he does. So Hawk will be leaving this stock round with priority, almost certainly, as Turtlehead is floating his own company. Does need to sell something to get that last share, and looks to sell his PRR share. So a lot of trashing and floating in this game. All the companies have floated. We will probably see a pretty explosive train rush as a result. CNO, first to operate, is just going to upgrade to maximize its run. Again, this company is safe from the 4s, so is the PRR, but the LV will be able to rust the 2s for the remaining players. He may actually elect to shuffle a 2 out of the PLE to move some cash around, and then also allow his 2 to run one last time, and then rust the 2s for the remaining player. CNO doesn't want to see that happen, and will just rust the 2s for everyone. So that's the benefit of having first operation. PRR will now buy in his private and is looking to lay towards Philadelphia. Could have laid towards the Lehigh Valley, but since he's not the president there and Turtlehead has just trashed everyone's shares, maybe looking to bypass the LV and get a quick token in Philadelphia to hurt its long-term potential. And he lays pretty unhelpful track in terms of the CNA and LV. They are not going to be able to get into New York through Philadelphia here. We'll be forced to just take the less revenue-generating double dit tiles. In the long term, this does upgrade, and they could potentially get into New York through it. And the LV is also able to potentially get into Harrisburg for a token, after an operating round or two. But this is pretty aggressive and painful play from the PRR player for those 2 companies. I think that's correct that the 00 upgrades. Yes. So there will be a permanent hole even in gray, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, it either has to be south or north. So it is unfortunate for these players that they are not going to be able to both be able to run into New York from one side. PRR running his 3 train has a better route as a result of the Philadelphia tile. And he also buys a 4. So these 4s are flying off. There are 3 left. There is still an export, and there are 3 companies that are new that are going to be looking to buy trains. So we will probably see the 5s break, if not in this operating round, in operating 5.2. Lehigh Valley has the option of running into Harrisburg in the next operation or down into New York. May favor getting into New York first, but will eventually want to develop some track heading west as well. He buys a 4 and we'll just sit on 1 4 train. PLE will probably link up with Ohio and has a 3 train run as a result. And he is going to shuffle trains from the LV. So this leaves the LV without a train. We'll be falling back, but potentially looking to pick up a 5, as there are 2 other companies that will need to buy those 4s. They don't necessarily need to. They can shuffle out of their co-companies, but they may just bite the bullet and buy a 4. CNA's first operation will be laying with a goal of getting quickly into New York. Could have also laid in this orientation and hope to get into Baltimore for a quick token, given how important that tends to be. He passes as he doesn't have a route, so stalling on the 4s a little bit. B&O going to be linking the CNA in, So the CNA will have a route for its next operation. But he didn't buy a train, so will not be running. A little bit unclear why he elected to do that. Could have bought a train and then run. I guess he's hoping to manipulate when the fives break, but losing a run in the face of this train rush may be detrimental to his hopes of winning. Bino is going to just run and actually withhold, so now he has 5 train money in both of his companies, but this is hurting him in terms of his net worth compared to the other players. First operation of the NNW also will not be obligated to buy a train on this operating round if it doesn't want to, and he will be shuffling trains from the PRR. So these 4 trains are stalling a little bit. Strasbourg may be hoping to link right up into Wilmington, and as a result of the CNA player not buying a train, we'll have a much better option of doing that because the CNA is going to be falling back, whereas the SRR will be moving forward in the next operating round if it buys a train. So actually it doesn't lay towards Wilmington. Maybe hoping to get into Philadelphia instead, but it has to imagine that it runs the risk of competition from the LV for this track. So a little bit of a risky move. You know, the LV is probably motivated to get into New York, but may see this threat here and act to block it. He buys into his private and will be linking up with Hagerstown, so we'll have a run and have to buy a train at least. And spends its only token on Hagerstown. That is probably not the highest yield track tile to be tokening, so we'll have a hard time maintaining its routes in the later stages of the game as a result. He buys a 4 from the CNO, so these players are very reluctant to buy any force in the market, are probably just going to wait for the train export to take care of it for them. CNO looking to potentially get past Baltimore, will not be able to get into North Baltimore until Brown with this tile. And actually, yes, there is a tile. There is a like a 23 or 24 tile that exists that will get him in there. Oh, sorry, 45 or 46. 23 and 24 are these ones. So one of these tiles will get him in there, but there's only one in the game, so he may not see that tile come out when he needs it. And he's paying out. PRR running 1 train. We'll be linking the Strasbourg in and actually getting access into Baltimore. So the CNA's ambitions in Baltimore are probably done here, and he does token it. So that's a very important token for the rest of the game. PLE running 2 trains again, and is laying expensive track, but actually not heading towards Washington, heading down into Leesburg. Not entirely sure where he's headed with that. LV doesn't have a train, will be linking up with Harrisburg. The token in Hagerstown is a little bit painful for the LV player, as he was probably hoping to get west further than Harrisburg. As a result, not getting into New York, but is blocking the Strasbourg from heading east there. However, the fact that the Strasbourg was able to loop around into Hagerstown kind of negates this tile for the Strasbourg, at least until LV potentially tokens in Harrisburg. He is continuing to shuffle trains, and the CNO now with a route will be forced to buy a train. Does he link up with Philadelphia? Looks like he's going to rush towards New York, and he will buy a forward train. So there's 1 left. It will be exported at the end of this phase, regardless if someone buys it, opening up the 5s. Operating order of the companies is not entirely fixed in the sense that CNO or PRR could be sold down, and that would change the relative operation of those companies. But as they are so close to their ledge, it's going to be very hard to do much manipulation of turn order. So the 5 trains may be coming out and going to these companies depending on if they shuffle cash into the PRR. B&O player upgrading Camden, and will be heading into New York. May see a token here. However, there's no risk of another company getting into Camden until Brown, so may just hold on to it. He does burn it. The BNO only has 3 tokens, so now is out of tokens, has secured a route into New York, and may be able to work its way west in the late game before a run into Ohio, which is the 2 high revenue centers of the game, including DC. And in W, will he lay himself track or just continue to sit as a suitcase? Looks like he does want the run and will be running his 3. SRR, upgrading his home tile, and running a 4-train and paying out. So the 4-train exports, the 5 trains are available. May see some shenanigans in terms of manipulating turn order up here, but otherwise the CNO should be, the CNO is guaranteed to get a 5. PRR, without a withhold, will not be able to afford it, and I don't think it has the route to, get $200. So probably will be missing out on the 5s as the rest of the companies are going to snap them up. Hawk, holding the CNA and the BNO, probably will just be looking for a paying share here. Both of these companies are pretty healthy in terms of track and long-term potential. He's buying a N&W, just looking for cheap yellow shares, it looks like. Fast Attack also buys an N&W, so these players are snapping up the cheap shares. The risk of this is that if for some reason the 6 comes out beforehand, they may just be falling back without any benefit. The odds of that happening seem low. CNO will buy 5, the BNO will buy a 5, and the LV will buy a 5, but nobody else has 6-train money without doing some shuffling or withholding before the N&W operates, so probably a safe purchase. RMC has a bunch of cash as a result of buying in his privates finally, and he will be buying the PLE. Turtlehead, buying a BNO, and Hawk's last purchase is one of these cheap shares again. Fast Attack, looking towards the PLE. PLE is sold out and will be floating up as a result, but still shouldn't be operating before the CNO. Correct. So even if these shares are sold down, the PLE will operate third. SRR now going. BNO is sold out, and the SRR may also sell out as players seem to be prioritizing these yellow shares. Looks like there may be 1 share in the market, and RMRC only has money now for a cheap share, so will he pick the N&W or the SRR? If I'm this player, I probably would pick the N&W. I don't want to buy my own market share, and I also don't want my yellow company floating up unnecessarily. But he will take the SRR, so floating his own company. Into the next operating round, it looks like Turtlehead running the PLE and LV will have priority. There is a dump opportunity with the PLE onto Fast Attack. Fast Attack has some liability here in terms of trains. Doesn't have money for 2 permanent trains, so if we saw a trainless PLE dump, could spell bankruptcy for him. But we'll see how the game develops. CNO is passing his upgrade and will be almost certainly buying a 5 here. He does, so brown trains are available. And what does the PRR want to prioritize? Maybe looking to put brown on the Philadelphia 00. It can run there, and it also is maintaining its tokens significance on Baltimore by minimizing the chance of the gray 00 tile being laid there. But let's see. Actually, it does upgrade Baltimore. Not the end of the world. It does increase your run a little bit in terms of allowing you to get into New York or into Washington D.C. But does run the risk of eventually there being a gray tile and negating the significance of your token. Has a pretty good 4-train run. Unfortunately, will not get the money for a 5-train, so just withholding to prepare for an eventual 6 or D. PLE, laying more expensive track, and I guess hoping to link up with the N&W, but he's doing it in a very expensive manner, and it's going to take another couple of operating rounds. So this seems questionable. We may see this company trying for a dump. Turtlehead does have priority, so maybe just spending his company's treasury and gonna dump that token nowhere helpful, and then dump the company itself. Running and is paying out. LV does have 5 train money. Will he head into New York now? Looks like he wants to get a token in Harrisburg potentially. He passes, so I don't know why you upgrade that token or that tile and don't leave a token. You could also just get into New York. New York is 80 as we're in brown. Seems more valuable than Harrisburg. He is withholding. Did have 5 train money, so uncertain why we're seeing a withhold there. Also doesn't buy the 5, so that's 2 strange companies in a row in terms of decisions. B&O will have to withhold for the 5 since it's sold out, and does complete the track into New York. He withholds and the 5 goes. 1 5 left before we see some rusting events with the 6. SRR upgrades its home tile and runs its 4 train. Has been tokened out of DC by the PR in Baltimore, so PR and B&O, so he's a little bit sad about that, but is running okay. And CNA now, will he withhold for a 5 train? Upgrades Philadelphia, and he withholds, and we will see the last 5 go. NNW now doesn't have the track to withhold for a 6, but do we see him withhold anyways? He does. So we will be seeing the 6 come out in this operating round, and that may lead to a bankruptcy. Turtlehead has cash for 1 permanent train, and has a fair amount of liquidity, so can out of pocket a D if that becomes necessary. And Fast Attack is the other player kind of at risk. He has a fair amount of company money, much less liquidity, but depending on how the trains break, probably can survive this operating round. CNO running 2 trains will be allowing the Strasbourg into DC, also maybe hoping to bypass the Baltimore blockade here. And he does token Strasbourg. Strasbourg's not a very important city in terms of tokens. I would have liked to see him hold on to that. PLE, upgrading Greenspring, running his 4 train, and does he pay this out? He does. So I'm suspicious that if this game makes it to the next stock round without a bankruptcy, we will see this PLE company dumped. Fast Attack, he upgrades DC. Does he token there? He does. DC tokens are kind of hit or miss. Without a D train, oftentimes I will forego tokening DC because I'd like to just run to it, not run through it. But he may be looking at a D train, so not unreasonable to leave a token there. LV upgrades Harrisburg into brown, so he's dead set on upgrading this tile. He upgraded it last time too. And he will be just running, not leaving a token again, so he has no interest in getting to New York. And he withholds again. Does not buy a train. So I'm confused what this player's strategy is. Maybe looking for a D train in the LV after dumping the PLE in the effort to bankrupt someone, but he is probably going to lose if someone else goes bankrupt, as long as it's not RM or C. How is he so far ahead in net worth with all these withholds? I guess he's a minority investor in the B&O, so maybe that has gotten him some money. SRR, upgrading Hagerstown, and now does he run into DC? Looks like he doesn't. Unfortunately, because the way this track is laid, it wouldn't be able to hit 4 revenue centers and hit DC. B&O running 2 trains and looking to just link up in the south. That seems like a low yield track lay too. You could potentially lay some tragic track for the N&W here, or look to upgrade Camden, but we'll be just running down south. CNA completes that link up and runs his 2 trains. Still sitting on a token, doesn't have token money, so he withholds, and as a result, he will have the ability to drop a token at the next operating round. Where is he looking to drop that? Hopefully not on Harrisburg. That doesn't seem like a worthwhile endeavor. The PRR, I think, has out of tokens, so they shouldn't be worried too much about Philadelphia. A lot of these tokens have been dropped elsewhere. He doesn't really have to defend there. Yeah, going to be a long time before N&W is able to get a token over on the east, or the PLE, for instance. N&W is able to get into DC and will be running. Actually can't reach DC unless it tokens Charlottesville, which I don't imagine it's eager to do. And it pays out, but unfortunately still doesn't have money for a 6 train. So people get a little bit of a relief in terms of the train rush. PRR is looking to buy a 6 at the start of the next operating round, and we will see now if this dump that I've been kind of worried about does actually occur. He sells an LV. He's just selling out of everything, it looks like, and doesn't actually dump the PLE, so I can't explain the decisions he made in the last operating round. Fast Attack is selling out of the N&W and dumps it on Hawk, and is going to be buying paying shares elsewhere. So that is a potential bankruptcy target here. He does have permanent trains in his other 2 companies, but doesn't have enough money for a 6 or a D. He is borderline in terms of liquidity for the permanent D train. RMC buying the PRR shares. Players are recognizing that even though it doesn't have a train, it has a ton of cash, so really not a dumpable company. Turtlehead buying an N&W. This does open up the potential for a dump back onto Fast Attack if another share is bought. Hawk is selling out of the SRR, and he is doubling down on the N&W, so if another player buys a market share, he could dump it back on Fast Attack if that player doesn't sell down. But it looks like he's not really that interested in doing that. Fast Attack, invest in the CNO, probably should sell a share in the N&W if he wants to be safe. Turtlehead buying an N&W, so we could see a double dump of this company, which would be really bad for Fast Attack, since he sold out of it and will only be able to run 20% of it when it's dumped. That would be pretty funny to see. We'll see if Hawk recognizes that and takes advantage of that. He does. So that is a fumble from Fast Attack for sure. Am I remembering correctly? Fast Attack was the initial president of this company? He was. So that's exactly what you don't want to happen when you're dumping a company. Got a little greedy and held on to 20% there. Hawk continuing to invest. And we are seeing the CNA probably selling out here. It's a safe investment, does have a permanent train, and is operating later in turn order than the B&O, so no dump potential there really. Turtlehead buys the last share. Hawk now investing in the LV. This company has a ton of cash, does not have a permanent train, and will be operating late in turn order, so probably will be falling back, but should be able to buy a pretty nice train. SRR getting sold down, has kind of limited track potential and not enough money for a permanent train, so not a great investment. Fast Attack. RMRC is almost cert locked. Does have cash to invest, but maybe not feeling like there's a safe investment opportunity. Yeah, I guess the LV could be an option here. but he chooses to just pass. And it looks like that's the end of the stock round. So RMRC will be going first in the next stock round. CNO is a dump candidate. CNO has decent track, but he may try and bankrupt someone by just putting it into the new president's hands without a 5-train, of course. CNO linking up there, probably hoping to get into New York in the future through Allentown. Again, tokens are becoming limited, so the odds of him being tokened out of Allentown are becoming less likely. CNA could potentially do it once Allentown is upgraded, and may see that happen as the CNA is otherwise pretty lacking in token options. CNO is tokening in Philadelphia. So Philadelphia's track is determined in the sense that it will never be running through Trenton. He has no option to get into New York through Camden. Actually, there is a great city that can be laid there, which would open that up. But interesting choice of token. I think I would have held on to that. Maybe hope to get into Allentown. PLE still laying kind of random track. Not sure what he's doing here. And he is withholding. So he's been withholding on both of his companies for some time. He has a ton of cash in the LV. Not sure what we're going to see from this player. PRR trainless will be buying a 6. He actually just shuffles trains from the NNW. He could have bought the 6 and still bought the 3 over. So these players are very scared of this 6 train coming out. Upgrading CNA, or upgrading Camden, and running his 2 trains. This is great for companies running the 3 trains. They are getting a real lease on life. So Hawk has 17 shares. He's behind in share density compared to Turtlehead, but his revenues should be allowing him to come back into this game. SRR, just going to get an alternate route into Harrisburg and running his train and withholding. Lots of withholding in this game. LV, will he finally break into the 6s? Looks like he will not manage to link into New York this turn, but may get himself 2 runs in the future if he's able to get friendly track here. And eventually Allentown will be upgraded. So securing 2 routes into New York. This is one of the reasons why I would have liked the CNO player to leave his token in Allentown rather than dumping it in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a lot less important in terms of track in this game. That's not always the case, but in this particular game it is. And the LV shuffles a train and again does not buy the 6. This is pretty funny. CNA, I think the players are just laying track to lay track at this point since there's been a stall on the trains. NNW, upgrading his home tile and running his train and withholding. CNO. Yeah, so I think they're just kind of laying track to lay track. Unfortunately, he is spending money to lay this track, $40. So really not working towards permanent train money. He does have a permanent train in this company, would need one in the SRR, so a little bit surprised to see him wasting cash for no real reason. PLE upgrading Leesburg and doesn't have permanent train money. Does withhold to get a little bit closer. PRR paying out and shuffling trains again from the NNW. So these players are just bouncing their trains around. But nobody is willing to buy this 6 train. SRR looking to get down into Richmond and Norfolk potentially. So I understand a little bit better now why the CNO player is laying the track it is, looking to help his second company in the SRR. SRR also withholding. Is this the first run from the LV? LV has withheld twice in the past. Will he pay out this time? And it looks like the first run of the LV now is complete. And he also is just shuffling trains. So nobody is willing to buy that 6. He gave the PLE 6 train money specifically, so will he be buying that in the next operating round? One can only hope. CNA, running 2 trains, linking up another route into DC, does leave a token in Harrisburg. May have done that on his last operation. I think I missed that. So it looks like probably Allentown and Philadelphia will both be left without a token for the foreseeable future, which is great for people who own D trains in the future. LV could token in Philadelphia. CNA pays out, running pretty well. NNW had its train stolen from it earlier in the operating round, and as a result has no run. He force buys a 6. So has enough money for, actually does not have enough money for, yes, he will. The D trains in Chesapeake are cheaper, so he will have enough money to upgrade the PRR's 4 train and get the D train. The other players, so Turtlehead will be on the hook for a 6 and then potentially a D, and he does have the cash to do that. And RMROC is also not in danger of bankruptcy. So probably will not see a bankruptcy after all those withholds and the stalling on the 6. CNO running his 5 train, unhappily now with only just 1 train, and paying it out. PRR probably looking at the D train upgrade would be my guess. And we do see the D. So there's 1/6 left. The rest of the players will be having to get away with a D train. Turtlehead, even if he has to out of pocket, does have the liquidity for 2 D trains, so there will be no bankruptcy, it looks like. PLE links up finally with the NNW and will be buying a D train. As that was not an emergency buy because the PLE had so much money, he actually had the option of buying the D instead of being forced to buy the cheaper train. We are in the gray phase now, so we'll be seeing some gray tiles coming out potentially. Would love to see the B&O drop the gray 00 on Philadelphia to maintain its token worth on the 00 city. Granted, the track has opened up so much that that token has been bypassed, so it becomes much less important. Could just lay it on Baltimore to increase the revenue of its run. Instead, going to open up DC. It does increase its run's value a fair amount, but does allow all the companies to run through there now. LV, no money for a permanent train, but this player is safe from bankruptcy. We'll have to sell shares. Could buy the 6. We'll have to buy the 6 unless he shuffles. He places a gray tile in Harrisburg and doesn't token it. Where does he leave his token? On Greenspring. That is interesting. So he is really relying on the NNW's largesse here to not leave a token on DC or Harrisburg to maintain this kind of circuitous route that he has built for himself. Would have been much safer to token DC. SRR, not laying track and will be on the hook for a D train as the LV got the 6. And he does take that D train. CNA has a permanent train, has a lot of money, maybe looking to withhold and get a D train for itself. Really doesn't have too good of a D train run. Well, I take that back. It does have a good D train run now, but is again at the mercy of the NNW to maintain it. The PLE and the NNW have tokens left. Neither have money, but the NNW with 5 trains and 5 shares in the market, by paying out this turn, should be able to get at least 1 token worth of money. CNA running his train. and withholding, so we'll have cash for a D. Do we see an upgrade here? He just outright buys it. So he will be running 2 trains in the CNA. He has max, he's reached his cert limit in the investment in the CNA, so looking to run that to kingdom come, basically. In terms of net worth, he is third, but just very narrowly against Turtlehead. Turtlehead has a 4-share advantage on him, but CNA is going to be running really hot, at least until this token comes out, so maybe able to overcome that advantage. NNW, he will be running for 300, which will give him enough money for the first token, and will actually get him enough money, I believe, for both of his tokens. Yes, so he has 150. Next stock round, all the players have cash. Fast Attack has the least and is also lagging behind in terms of shares, so probably we'll see him in last place in this game. The other players are quite close together, and Turtlehead is at his cert limit, and there's not a whole lot of yellow shares to buy. So if I am trailing Turtlehead, I am prioritizing these yellow shares. There's actually only one company out of the yellow zone that has shares available to buy, so I imagine we will see these yellow shares snapped up. SRR has a D train, may run for a little bit more than NNW, but the NNW has the ability to make and break these D runs with its tokens. RMOC actually going to be buying the sole non-yellow shares in the game. It's also a company that only has a 6, so a little bit surprising that we're not seeing one of these other shares being bought. Turtlehead is counting his lucky stars that these players are not buying the yellow shares and will be buying a yellow share of his own. Hawk does look towards the yellow shares. Fast Attack also picking up the cheap yellow shares. Will RMOC see the error in his ways and pick up an NNW here? He does. And Turtlehead is happy to buy those up, but shouldn't be given the opportunity to buy another one. And looks like they have sold out. So Turtlehead is all the shares he's going to get. RMROC will be picking up the LV. Turtlehead doing a little bit of rearranging of his portfolio and looking to pick up the last LV share. Hawk, presumably, unfortunate for Hawk, he's not able to buy the B&O, so Fast Attack will buy the last share in the game. Everything's sold. There are dump opportunities as a result, and we will pass into the next operating round. The market is looking pretty unhealthy. Between these 8 companies, we probably will see a break. There are a number of D trains. Some companies are actually running 2 trains, so the revenue from these companies should be enough to make this the last set of operating rounds. CNO just running his 5 train, and he will pay it out. I expect we will be seeing all these companies paying out now that there are no train liabilities and we're entering the last set of ORs. PRR out of tokens and just kind of optimizing its D run by getting into Ohio without having to pass through Greenspring. The most interesting part of this operating round will be probably seeing where NNW tokens. I assume we will see a token on DC and then potentially on Harrisburg or Allentown. But he will have to make that decision. As these companies are really just running their trains, I'm going to skip through it pretty quickly and just see where the NNW leaves a token. He tokens Leesburg. I don't even know where that is. Where is Leesburg? So that is a worthless token. He is also running the PLE, which does have a D train, so maybe he's trying to preserve the D run for the PLE. But you have to look at the investments from the other companies in terms of how many shares are invested in these D trains to see if it makes sense to preserve the run or not. So we can do that very briefly. I will just comment that it looks like the B&O player has shuffled the D train out of the CNA and into the B&O, which is a mistake because he's hoping to overtake Turtlehead here, and Turtlehead owns 3 shares in this company, so he's moving his D revenue into a company that's owned by Turtlehead. He also, I think, lost a run by doing this since he bought it up in the operating order, so that's a mistake that will probably result in him losing the game. So it looks like the game is mostly between RMROC and Turtlehead. Turtlehead has 1 share on him and is just slightly ahead in he's actually slightly behind in net worth right now, and that could just be a consequence of which companies have operated and which have not. So we'll just look at the D investments in these 2 players. Turtlehead has 6 shares and 9 shares, 10 shares in these D companies, whereas RMROC has 6, 8, and 10. So preserving the D runs probably is not in Turtlehead's interest, is it? Because I think I said he had 9 and RMOC has 10. So if that's the case, then you probably want to see that N&W token come out to block the other companies. But what are you going to do? N&W running pretty hot, which is the 6 train. SRR, even though it's not generally speaking the best company, has managed to secure a D run for itself and will be running quite well as a result. CNA, and running just as 5 train. So we have finished the first operating round of what I think will be the last operating set. Yep. And it looks like RMROC has the net worth lead, and he is running for just slightly less than Turtlehead. So without there being a significant change in this scenario, RMOC will win the game. I do think that Turtlehead could potentially hurt his net worth a little bit, or hurt his revenue a little bit more than he hurts his own by tokening with the N&W. So if he does that, it's close enough that there could be a change in the winner. So I will skip through this very quickly just to see if the N&W drops a token anywhere. And he passes placing a token. So as a result of this, I think that RMROC is going to be taking this game. Again, RMROC is running for about 100 less, but he has, well, it's very close. So he's only up by around $100. So it's going to come down to this last runs. We'll just skip to the end here. Turtlehead ekes it out over RMROC. So he did eventually token his Harrisburg, but as a result of the operating order, he was able to cut off the D run from the SRR, or make it at least a little bit worse. Did that change the outcome of the game? It did deny probably $90 or so from the SRR's run. And that is not enough to have changed the game. So maybe the token didn't come down to the deciding factor, but it was quite close. In this type of game, if I was playing, I would create a hot seat game and really delve down into the math of where it makes sense to token and where it doesn't. In my video, I'm just kind of giving you back of the envelope calculations, just kind of a gestalt feeling for whether or not it makes sense. But if you're trying to win, I think actually sitting down and doing the math is imperative. So anyway, Turtlehead takes this game. There was some interesting decision making in terms of the early track non-development by the B&O, the stall at the 6, and I think a lot of the players were worried about there being a bankruptcy and them potentially losing as a result of another player going bankrupt. So they played it really slow and did a lot of withholding, and ultimately were able to afford a ton of D trains. So we did see a pretty high net worth at the end. Well played to the players, and Track Talk will be back with more interesting commentary in the future.